4. And we'll do roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Here.
Mrs. Keller?
Here.
Mr. Browning?
Here.
Mr. Rohr?
Here.
Mr. Hellinger?
Here.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Here.
Mayor Riggle?
Here. This evening, we're going to have a presentation by Marianne Gable with the Citizens Climate Lobby Delaware, Ohio chapter. So as you come forward, will you please give us your name and address for the record? This is all recorded.
Thank
So
you.
welcome.
And Charlie Murphy is also. Do you want our names and addresses
Please.
first? Okay.
Marianne Gable, 49 Forest Avenue, Delaware.
And I'm Charlie Murphy, and it's Sharlee, whoever's doing this. And my address is 127 Hillside Drive.
Thank you.
And we, Mrs. Mayor, Council, Mr. Holman, city staff, we're really grateful for you to have inviting us back to, or having us back again to talk and share your time a little more about a really important first step toward addressing climate change. We are here to ask you to show your leadership in a really key issue for the region, for the country, and for the world. We will start, we have a very short video to start with. It's only a minute and a half to kind of set the tone. And then Charlie will go through a PowerPoint, and then I'll have a few remarks, and then there'll be questions, and we hope we will wrap it up on time for you.
Thank you.
We undid callousness and hopelessness. We undid evil and evil's evil twin. We've come a long way. We undid impossible and impossibly impossible.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
We undid indignity and carelessness. Just look at all we've undone. Certainly, we can undo overwhelming. It's time to undo climate change. Undo your part. There's a simple, bipartisan solution to climate change Congress needs to hear about. Go to undoyourpart.com.
So I guess you don't have to go to undo your part because we're here trying to explain it to you. I have been a citizen of Delaware, Ohio since the mid-'70s. And I've been a member of the Citizens Climate Lobby here locally for 2.5 years. Our group has been in existence for 4 years. The national group has been in existence for 10 years. And so we're going to look at this PowerPoint so you understand a little bit more about Citizens, Citizens Climate Lobby, and then a little bit more about our proposal, I hope. So thank you for having us here. Citizens Climate Lobby, well, that was interesting. All right, has lots of members across our country who come every year in June and go to Washington, and they have workshops and they set up meetings with congressmen. Our goal is to lobby Congress to pass the carbon fee and dividend resolution that you hopefully have taken a look at. A little more about the group. There are over 480 organizations. Most of them are in the United States and Canada, but there are some in other countries as well. It's a nonpartisan group. It is a nonprofit group. We are solution focused in that we are strictly, very narrowly focused on this carbon fee and dividend proposal that we're trying to get passed. And when we speak with people about our ideas, we try to do that in a non-confrontational way with respect for everyone and everyone else's ideas as well. Our mission is to create political will for climate solutions by enabling individual breakthroughs in personal and political power. This is just a chart that's a reminder of the fact that since the 1900s, the temperature on Earth has been gradually increasing, and then in the last 30 years or so, it hasn't been quite as gradual as it gets more red on the chart. And this is because of carbon emissions into the atmosphere. You've probably heard that not all scientists agree with this idea of climate change and what causes it, but this chart gives you an idea of the percentages. This is for climate scientists only, but of all the climate scientists, the evidence shows that 97% of them are convinced that climate change is real and it's man-made because of the carbon emissions. In the United States, as the slide shows, the risks different based on the different states, and some of the most drastically affected, I would say, are highlighted here. In Texas, there's heat and drought and more fires, sea level rise, floods, and lost labor productivity because of all of those things that were already mentioned. In Montana, there's a reduced snow cover, glacial retreat, pine beetle infestation, which has really devastated a lot of the pine trees in that area. And I don't think that's only in Montana. I think other areas in that, other states in that area have had that problem too. In Florida, because of sea level rise, you've probably seen pictures of the cities with the water running through their streets, even just when it's not a hurricane, just because of the sea level rise. Localized flooding, hurricanes are more extreme, it seems, than they have been in the past, and the extreme heat, which is already hot enough in Florida. Oh, I forgot California. Can't forget California. California has severe drought, reduced snowpack, and they've had water issues for many years. Trouble because they want to get it from northern, and the northern doesn't want to send it down to the farms, and all kinds of problems. So luckily, we live in Ohio, so we don't have as many because we're kind of in the center here. But we do have some impacts on us. There's an impact on our health, of course. The air quality makes people with respiratory illnesses have a lot more problems. Vectors, which are ticks and mosquitoes. There are ticks in Ohio that never were here before until maybe the last 5 years or so, and that's because of the weather getting warmer and the winter's not killing them off. And then those vectors can cause lots of diseases that are harmful. It also has shown that there are increases in agricultural pests and plant diseases, which lead to lower yields in our many farm communities for our farmers and affect their way of making a living. And we really noticed this in the last couple of years, more frequent storms and maybe more dramatic storms and flooding that we've had. So how do we solve the problem? Citizens Climate Lobby thinks that we need to price carbon to reflect its true external costs on society and on the world. What's our solution? It's carbon fee and dividend. And carbon fee and dividend has 3 parts to it. The first part is that we have this proposal, and it's to place a fee on fossil fuels, and that would be coal, oil, whatever the fossil fuels are, and put that fee on at its source. So that would be the mine or the well or the port. Now, if we stopped here, well, first of all, the carbon fee would be smaller at the beginning, so it would shock the economy, and then it would rise gradually every year, and it's proposed what the amount, the percentage of increases right in the proposal, so people would know what that is. If we stopped here, this would still hurt the economy because fuel prices would become higher and people wouldn't be able to pay for it. Businesses would have trouble with the fuel prices. So we don't stop here with our proposal. Our second part of our proposal is that we take that money that we've collected, put it into a trust fund, and return it to the people proportionally, so that each person in a household, each adult up to 2 would get a full credit, each child would get a half credit up to 2. So there'd be minimal administrative costs. It would be returned kind of like a rebate, and it would come back every month. So that would enable people to be able to afford the higher prices on the fuel. The third part of our proposal is really because of businesses, because if they had to increase their prices because of this carbon fee, it wouldn't be fair for goods that were imported. People might start buying all those goods instead. So the third part is to put a border adjustment on those goods that are imported from countries that don't have a carbon fee, to make it an even playing field for our businesses and foreign businesses with this fee. Now, some economists can help us figure out what this carbon fee and dividend, what kind of an effect it's going to have. And so Citizens Climate Lobby commissioned the Regional Economic Model Incorporated, which is a nonpartisan commission, and we call it REMI, as you can understand why. And they looked at 4 different areas and what the effect would have on all these different areas. They looked at emissions and how it would affect the carbon dioxide emissions, the economy, health of people, and incomes. So all of this was what they studied in 2014. They did their study. And what they found was that under the carbon fee and dividend, in the first 10 years, the carbon emissions would diminish by 31%, and that's below 1990 levels. And after 20 years of having carbon fee and dividends, the carbon emissions would reduce by 50%, which is significant. As far as the jobs created, remember that families and individuals are going to be getting money back on a monthly basis from this fee that's collected. So that's going to stimulate the economy, and jobs will be created. And REMI found that after 10 years, 2.1 million jobs would be created, and after 20 years, 2.8 million jobs. The GDP growth under carbon fee and dividend, $70 to $85 billion a year would be the average growth, and after 20 years, it would be 1.375 trillion. Lives saved because with less carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, people with respiratory problems are going to be much healthier. 227,000 lives would be saved after 20 years of this carbon fee and dividend. And here's how it's going to affect the households or the families and the individuals. After 10 years, the average amount for a family of 4, they would be getting back on a monthly basis would be $288. And remember that the carbon fee is going to increase slightly every year, so it's going to increase. And after 20 years, each family would be getting $396. That money comes to families no matter what their income is. So you can imagine what that would mean to a lower income or middle income family to be getting that money back. It'll help them pay for their increased fuel costs, hopefully cover them. All right, here's what we think the advantages of carbon fee and dividend are. First of all, it creates a powerful market-based incentive for clean energy and development. People will probably look for alternatives if fossil fuel starts costing what it's really costing to our society. It's technology neutral. The market picks the winners. We don't say it should be solar or nuclear or anything else. Whoever gets the best deal will be the winner, and it'll probably be some of each. Whoops, sorry. Back up. It's transparent and predictable for business. Right now, I think a lot of times businesses don't know how much their fuel is going to cost for year to year, so when they do their budgets, they have to kind of estimate what it's going to be. With this, they would know how much the increase on the carbon fee would be every year, and that should help them, we hope, be able to budget accordingly. It does not grow the government. The dividends will largely offset higher prices for families during the transition to cleaner energy. And the biggest and most important is it reduces carbon emissions dramatically. Now, what we are asking of you is that you help us create this political will by supporting us, by recognizing the advantage of this particular proposal and passing the resolution so that we can all create a more livable world. Thanks. Marianne?
I wanted to touch on a couple other more of the aspects of how this kind of initiative could go forward in this country. One of the important aspects is that there is a lot of bipartisan support for acting on carbon. You don't hear a lot about it in the press levels, but in Congress there is a group called the Climate Solutions Caucus. It was started in Florida by 2 Florida congressmen a couple of years ago, and they said we need bipartisan action on Congress, and this caucus is going to work on it. But we'll only admit members, Congress people, 2 at a time, 1 Republican and 1 Democrat. So it's called the Noah's Ark theory. And it started out with, I think, 8 representatives in the Climate Solutions Caucus. Now it is up to 74. 74 members of Congress are working together to try and find a solution. And one of those people was Representative Pat Tiberi. Before he stepped down, we had wonderful conversations with him. He was very gracious to us. He listened. We had a meeting with him at the Chamber of Commerce offices back in July of last year. And with that, all that input and other things, of course, other things he was hearing and reading, he moved forward and joined the Climate Solutions Caucus. He has now not on the caucus anymore, but 2 Ohio Congress people are David Joyce in Northeast Ohio and Marcy Kaptur in Northwest Ohio are on the Climate Solutions Caucus. There's also a group called the Climate Leadership Council, and there's some materials in the packet about that. This is a group that formed about a year ago, led by some really notable names. James Baker, former Treasury Secretary and Secretary of State. George Shultz, former Treasury Secretary and Secretary of State. There are some economists, you can see the list. And they came forward with a plan for a carbon fee and dividend. It's very much like ours. There are a couple details of difference, but they published editorials in the Wall Street Journal, in the New York Times. They have been a very vocal voice from the conservative side saying this is something we need. So that's exciting. There's also a group of Republican college students called Students for Carbon Fee. And I was just reading tonight that there was something they were doing, they were presenting somewhere. It's a national organization. These are students coming for a carbon fee. Of course, you have to loop back to the risk that we have, and Charlie covered that very well. But right now in the American West, there is a heat wave that's bringing 100-degree temperatures to some of the cities there. It's and for Ohio, the storms and the water runoff affect Lake Erie tremendously because the fertilizer goes off into Lake Erie and creates algae blooms. There's trouble in here for everybody, including Ohio. But there's a benefit to joining the World Forward Motion on clean energy. You know, there are economies in Europe where the auto technology is going forward. Other clean energy technology like wind turbines are really moving forward. And there are indications that if you're not doing that, you're going to be in trouble. Back in February, the Siemens Corporation closed its Mount Vernon factory, laid off 400 people, and the president said Siemens missed the bus on land-based wind energy, and we expect market demand of gas turbines to keep declining. The official cited the rapid change in the power generations industry toward renewable energy as a disruption of unprecedented scope and speed. So that was just an example of one Ohio company that went out of business because they didn't see clean energy coming. So that's really important. One topic that didn't come up is the effect on the Defense Department. The Defense Department U.S. Defense Department is very concerned about climate change because it's what's called a threat multiplier. If you have unrest in a nation like in the Middle East and there's a famine or there's storms or something that population can't deal with, and they start moving and they start getting into conflict over climate-related issues, that causes a lot of problems for the Defense Department, and our bases overseas are sometimes in the way of rising sea levels. Norfolk, Virginia actually is in having a lot of problems because the sea level is rising and the land is sinking, and Norfolk, Virginia has floods way too often. So those are just some of the kind of the international and national trends going on that I think should resonate down at the level of all of us for what we are looking for to create a livable world. So you have before you a powerful message to send to Congress for a solution that Congress could work on and get started on doing something about this. There's a poll, and in your materials you'll see a poll of conservatives in Ohio that show they're overwhelmingly in favor of clean energy. So it's the message that we can see, but it's the message that we need to get to our leaders. At this point, I'm happy to take questions.
Any questions? Comments? You did an
Okay.
excellent job.
Well, thank you. I hope that's it. Just to go quickly through your packet, it is what it appears to be. The EPA summary from February of 2017 of focusing on Ohio climate change effects on the precipitating flooding on the Great Lakes, air pollution, and human health. Agriculture, this notes that there's sometimes anticipated to have a beneficial effect on agriculture because there's more carbon in the air and more warmth, but that only goes so far, again, and it has to be measured against drought and floods. Then you have the founding statement of the Climate Leadership Council, the poll from Public Opinion Strategies, which is a Republican polling firm, and finally, this is just the summary of all the important things about carbon fee and dividend. And being market-based is a big, not regulatory, is a big benefit, and it will empower and clean and efficient energy grows jobs, not government, and there's something in that's fair for all Americans in the dividend that comes back on a monthly basis. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, the only thing I would say is I'm quite familiar with this group and this mission, and I would encourage everybody to read all this because I'm going to call for a vote for this resolution at the June 11th meeting.
Yes, because I was put on the next one, yeah. So you've all got a copy of the resolution in your packets too, so make sure you read over it. If there's any questions, we'll get back to them and get them
You can
answered.
contact me, you can contact any of these folks, I can put you in
Okay,
contact.
And again, thank you very much for having us here.
thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for being so patient.
Oh, it was important.
Thank you so much.
Okay,
We get 2 minutes, 3 minutes? Quick minutes.
okay.
Okay, go. Are we gonna start the meeting right now?
I was going to, but we'll wait.
Oh, I'll say here, how's that?
Now just go. There's people in the audience that come in. Yeah, we'll adjourn the work session. Is there a motion?
I still haven't got it.
I think Kyle seconded it. Yeah.
Suppose they had all these bills.
All in favor of adjourning the work session? Aye. It's adjourned. How do you like that?
Everyone walks out.
Power.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Ready?
Thank you.
No problem. I feel better. Time is 7:04, and we'll call to order the city council meeting for May 14th, 2018. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Here.
Mrs. Keller?
Here.
Mr. Browning?
Here.
Mr. Rohr?
Here.
Mr. Hellinger?
Here.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Here.
Mayor Riggle?
Here. Tonight's invocation will be led by Chaplain Dan Maurer of the Delaware Police Chaplain, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'll all please rise. Dan, if you'll come up to the microphone and you can raise that up.
Let us pray. O eternal God, creator of heaven and earth, sustainer of all life, provider for the needy, defender of the helpless, You who possess all strength and power, we now turn our hearts to you, knowing that in your word you have warned us there would be a time of violence, people rising against others, a time when people would have a disregard for the law and disrespect for authority. Tonight, Father, I pray that you would comfort the widows and widowers who have cried themselves to sleep at the remembrance of that last hug or kiss that they had with their spouse before they went off to duty. Tonight, embrace the children who struggle to understand why a mommy or daddy will not be coming home. Tonight, ease the pain of mothers and fathers who have had to lay to rest their sons and daughters long before their time. Tonight, Father, we invite you to keep a watchful eye on our city and those brave men and women who don the uniform daily to walk the blue thin line. And also to keep your eyes on our leadership of this city. For we know that according to Psalm 127, verse 1, unless God protects the city, guarding it with sentries will do no good. So tonight, I entrust into your care, your protective care, our law enforcement community. And for our city leaders, Lord, I continue to thank you for their wisdom, their training, their knowledge. In the days ahead, as they direct our city, may you grant them wisdom and understanding far beyond anything of natural wisdom and understanding, so that citizens of Delaware may live in peace and enjoy your blessings now and forever. Amen.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Chaplain. That was beautiful. Item 4 is the approval of the motion summary of the regular meeting at council held April 23rd, 2018, as recorded and transcribed. What's the wish of council?
Move approval. Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Schaefer, a second by Mr. Hellinger. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rourke?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes, motion carries. Item 5 is the consent agenda. Elaine, can you please read this into the record?
Item A, acceptance of the motion summary of the Airport Commission meeting held on July 20th, 2017 as recorded and transcribed. Item B, acceptance of the motion summary of the Shade Tree Commission meeting held on February 27th, 2018 as recorded and transcribed. Item C, acceptance of the motion summary of the Finance Committee meeting held on February 28th, 2018 as recorded and transcribed. Item D, acceptance of the motion summary of the Civil Service Commission meeting held on April 4th, 2018 as recorded and transcribed. Item E, acceptance of the motion summary of the Planning Commission meeting held on April 4th, 2018 as recorded and transcribed. Item F, resolution number 18-25, a resolution appointing members to various boards, commissions, and/or committees and specifying the terms of the appointments. Item G, resolution number 18-26, a resolution authorizing the city manager to file an application with the Ohio Development Services Agency, Office of Community Development for the biennial program year 2018, CDBG, Community Development Allocation Program, and supplemented by local CDBG ED RLF program income. Item H, resolution number 18-27, a resolution designating the planning director as the municipal representative to the Delaware County Land Reutilization Corporation Board of Directors. Item I, established June 25th, 2018 at 7:30 p.m. as a date and time for a public hearing and third reading of resolution number 18-29. A resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into a joint economic development district JED contract with Berkshire Township. Item J, established June 11, 2018 at 7:20 p.m. as a date and time for a public hearing and second reading for ordinance number 18-43. An ordinance for AEP for approval of a conditional use permit request for a new service center building on approximately 50 acres located on the south side of Slack Road and just west of the railroad tracks on property zoned A1 Agricultural District. Item K, established May 21st, 2018 at 7:00 p.m. as a date and time for a public hearing and fifth reading for ordinance number 18-21 revised. An ordinance for Medrock LLC for approval of a revised zoning text amendment to the existing Willowbrook Farm Tract PUD overlay zoning text planned unit development to allow a modification to the maximum dwelling units and density to multifamily areas 3 and 4 to allow additional dwelling units in area 3 and removing units in area 4, thereby decreasing the overall units currently allowed in total located on the east side of Houck Road on approximately 38 acres on property zoned R6 multifamily residential district with a PUD, planned unit development overlay.
Okay. That's what I'm going to do that night? Okay. Okay, I'll just put it at once. What is the wish of council on the consent agenda? And good job, by the way.
Motion to approve the consent agenda?
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Jones, a second by Mrs. Keller. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes, motion carries. Item 6 is time set aside for letters, petitions, or public comments for anything that is not on tonight's agenda. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to come forward at this time? Okay, you can come forward.
I'm John Lewis, 1036 Hills Miller Road, Delaware. I
Pull that,
wanted to introduce Mike Freeburn.
pull that microphone down.
Oh, come on. I wanted to introduce Mike Freeburn, who's with Guild Associates, who many of you may know. Their company's coming to town, building in the Cemetery 2 building. And I just wanted to recognize that he's here and also that we appreciate items 13 and 14 that are coming up here in a little bit. And anyway, say thank you for everybody's help.
We're very excited to be here and move into Delaware, and really looking forward to what we can bring to the city.
Thank you.
Sure.
Welcome, Delaware. Is there anyone else that would like to come forward at this time? Seeing none, we'll move on to committee reports. Mr. Jones?
I have none at this time, Mayor.
Mrs. Keller?
I have none.
Mr. Browning?
I have none.
Mr. Rohr?
I have none.
Mr. Hellinger?
Finance Committee met on the 25th of April, and we'll have additional information forthcoming, and we have another meeting scheduled here fairly short order. So.
Okay, thank you. All right. We'll move on to presentations. And Police Chief, would you like to meet me down front? It's off the wall. Is that you? Okay. Well, thank you for being here. Whereas the Congress and President of the United States have designated May 15th as Peace Officers Memorial Day, and the week in which May 15th falls on National Police Week. Whereas there are more than 900,000 law enforcement officers serving in communities across the United States, including the dedicated members of the City of Delaware Police Department. Whereas the members of the Law Enforcement Agency of Delaware play an essential role in safeguarding the rights and freedom of the City of Delaware. Whereas it is important that all our citizens know and understand the duties, responsibilities, hazards, and sacrifices of the law enforcement agency, and the members of our law enforcement agency recognize their duties to serve the people by safeguarding life and property, by protecting them against violence and disorder, by protecting the innocent against deception and the weak against oppression. Whereas the men and women of the law enforcement agency of the City of Delaware unceasingly provide a vital public service. Now therefore, I, Carolyn K. Riddle, Mayor of Delaware, call upon all citizens of the city of Delaware and upon all patriotic, civic, and educational organizations to observe this week of May 13th, 2018 as National Police Week, with an appropriate ceremony and observation in which all of our people may join in commemorating law enforcement officers past and present, who by their faithful and loyal devotion to their responsibilities have rendered a dedicated service to their community, and in doing so have established themselves as an enduring reputation for preserving the rights and security of all citizens. I further call upon the citizens of the city of Delaware to observe Tuesday, May 15th, as Peace Officers Memorial Day in honor of all law enforcement officers who, through their courageous deeds, have made the ultimate sacrifice in service to our community or have become disabled by the performance of duty, and let us recognize and pay respect for all of our survivors of fallen heroes. Thank you very much for everything.
I'd like to thank you, Mayor, and Council for this proclamation. And also, I'd like to thank City Administrative staff, everyone that I work for. It's been really, really good with the police department, and we couldn't do it without that support. I also think it's a good opportunity to thank the community for the support the community shows us on a regular basis. We have guys out there that are working hard all the time to try and make Delaware a better place to be, but getting some of that reinforcement really helps with some of the community engagement, some of the non-traditional things that we want to do as a police department to connect with the community, to be the kind of police department you want us to be. So right now, a lot of our guys have been out all afternoon working on bank robbery. So we'd be here, we're a little preoccupied, but if I had to bet, you got me in jail very shortly. But again, I thank everyone for the support, and I hope you have a good year. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So when we did this one, we didn't know we were going to have another meeting next year, so you just get it a week early. That's okay. All right, Chief, look at this.
I don't look too close.
Sorry. I'm not going to say it.
Next one. Whereas emergency medical services is a vital public service, whereas the members of emergency medical services teams are ready to provide life-saving care to those in need 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Whereas access to quality emergency care dramatically improves the survival and recovery rate of those who experience sudden illness or injury. Whereas the emergency medical service system consists of emergency physicians, emergency nurses, emergency medical technicians, paramedics, firefighters, educators, administration, and others. Whereas the members of the emergency medical service team, whether career or volunteer, engage in thousands of hours in specialized training and continuing education to enhance their life-saving skills. Whereas it is appropriate to recognize the value and the accomplishment of the emergency medical services provided by designated Emergency Medical Service Week. Now therefore, I, Carolyn K. Riddle, the Mayor of the City of Delaware, in recognition of this event, do hereby proclaim the week of May 20th to the 26th as Emergency Medical Services Week, with the theme that the EMS strong, stronger together. I encourage the community to observe this week with appropriate programs, ceremonies, and activities. Thank you. And thank you all for being here. Difficult call this morning about 3 o'clock.
We did, and a very fortunate week for us. But with that, we do have the finest paramedics, firefighters with us. They do a tremendous job as you know. And first, thank you for this proclamation. Thank you to the City Council. Thank you for Chief Pijanowski, and this is EMS week. And next week is, is Police Week. Next week is EMS week. But we wanted to say thank you to the community. And each day these guys come in day after day, and not knowing what the day is going to hold for them, but knowing that each time the temple goes off, they're going to make a difference in the lives of the public. So I'd like to thank them personally. You know, I'm a big cheerleader of them, and very proud of the job that you do. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here this evening. Item 9 is consideration of a new liquor permit. Elaine, if you please read this into the record.
Yes.
Consideration of a new liquor permit for Ohio Wesleyan University doing business at Selby Stadium at 45 South Henry Street, Delaware, Ohio, 43015, permit class D1.
Thank you. Chief?
Madam Mayor, members of council, for consideration is a liquor permit request from Ohio Wesleyan University for use at Selby Stadium. They actually put in for this several years ago and there wasn't a permit available. So apparently it just came up and they were a little unsure as to which way they want to proceed with it. I don't have an issue with it. We found nothing. We have, obviously we're partner very well with Ohio Wesleyan University, so we have nothing in our background that would be a legislative basis for denial.
I was thinking during crew season, when the crew was here, we had beer then. No,
You mean the
not the
machine?
crew, the machine.
Well,
I'm
the
sorry.
machine was here, and I believe this is accurate. They transferred their liquor permit from Hamwell down to Selby Stadium. When the machine left, they transferred it back, but
Okay.
at the time they were trying to get the it's a beer on-site, on-premises consumption and for sale, closed bottle, but they put in for that, but weren't able to get it, so they did a transfer. But now that's available, it's an option to them.
Okay. Any questions for Chief? What is the wish for the liquor permit?
Move to accept it without objection. Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Schaefer, a second by Mr. Jones. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller? Yes. Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes, motion carries. Thank you. Item 10, second reading of ordinance 1837. Elaine, if you'll please read this in the record.
Dave, can you, sorry, put that up on the screen, please?
Ordinance number 18-37, an ordinance accepting the annexation of 89.618 plus or minus acres of land more or less. Description and map are attached hereto as exhibits A and B for the annexation known as the Wilgus annexation by Andrew P. Wecker, agent for the petitioners.
Thank you.
So this is a second reading of an annexation that has been contemplated for a number of years, and I wanted Dave to put it up on the screen and for Sean to spend a couple of minutes with council tonight just talking about the kind of overview of this property, the importance it plays in terms of the city's economic development plans, but also the reality that infrastructure costs to serve this property are not insignificant. And we have done a lot of analysis over the last several months in terms of the extension of Sawmill Parkway, which has to occur to serve the property, the extension of water lines, the extension of sewer lines, and then an interesting kind of issue is it's in another drainage area, another drainage shed as they call it, and there's a cost associated with that. So there's about $5.5 million worth of cost to serve this property. Now, obviously, if you just extend Sawmill Parkway a couple hundred feet to hit the property, can serve it, but you still have to open it up. So this really gets back to some of the questions that Chris Jones asked earlier in the year about the cost of development, where are our priorities, and how do we come up with the dollars to do this? We met, Sean and I met last week with the folks, Planned Communities, who's represented tonight by Jack Brickner, just to talk about that and to be realistic about the cost of developing these properties and increasingly the importance of these partnerships between the community that wants the jobs, the private sector who can make it work, and then the sellers as well. And so with that said, I just want Sean, if you can, just to spend a couple of minutes just kind of walking through what we've done. And obviously we have
Bill and Dave have been, throughout the whole process, have been part of this, and Dave, you might want to
I was
add.
just going to say quickly while Sean's getting settled that this is just a second reading. I think the applicant's not looking for action tonight, but perhaps at the June 11th meeting, they have filed a rezoning request for the property, and they're trying, the rezoning request and annexation won't dovetail perfectly in timing, but they wanted the opportunity to get that in while the annexation was still sitting on your table.
We were planning to spend some of the meeting on the 21st discussing this, but obviously we've got the other item that we're going to be dealing with that evening. So we wanted to take the opportunity at least to review kind of how we're approaching the development of this property, which has been contemplated. So,
good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council. Tom just literally said everything I was going to say. So we've talked a lot in previous work sessions and whatnot about these studies that we've done in the Southwest area here in regards to this area that was to be served by Sawmill Parkway is served by Sawmill Parkway, and the realities of creating pad-ready land, and talking about the extreme cost. I mean, if you look at this site in particular, because of the work that we've done with Innovation Court and Innovation Park, this is a natural direction to go, right? You're already starting to come up. We're at the edge of the property with your road. Well, not technically the road, because the road ends before the parcel line. We've talked about that too. How did that happen? It ends before there, but the utilities are essentially there to the site. But to properly serve the 90 acres, as Tom said, you're looking at $5.5 million of infrastructure costs. So if you take that into perspective of where the rest of the Central Ohio market is with land pricing, say, you know, the Wilguses wanted to get 50,000 an acre, for instance, and I don't know what they're going to price it at, but say they want to ask 50,000, and you have to tag on another $59,000 for the eastern parcel and $69,000 for the western parcel, you're pushing the land over $100,000 an acre. That pushes you towards Rickenbacker pricing. And Rickenbacker, as we all know, is an intermodal served, high quality, established industrial park. So that's where, as Tom mentioned, you know, we have to start looking for the opportunities for partnership on, you know, the property owner or the master developer that we hope to bring in to partner with that property owner and us can take on some of the cost of serving the property, and we can as well, with hopes that we then are bringing in end users at a cost that is affordable to them, it's cost effective, but also can make the property owner and the developer money, as well as our community ultimately money. There has to be a return on investment for all of those partners. So with that being said, does anybody have any questions in regards to one of the big challenges, I think, is actually whether or not you take Sawmill Parkway all the way over to the far western property line, you still have to figure out the drainage issue. As Tom said, this is Olentangy, so the water is going to go towards the quarry. And with that being said, I mean, we know we can take a little bit up to Airport Road temporarily, but ultimately you're looking at taking a ditch all the way across there to Section Line Road. Again, whether or not you build the road, and that has a price tag on it. So even if we develop at a 5 to 10, 15 acre incremental stage like we normally do as a city, there's this price tag there. And for just the first parcel, and that's a $350,000 price tag. For the second, it's $154,000, assuming the first parcel gets developed, to get that all the way across. So, and that's without doing anything else. That's just to get to a point where we can develop 10 acres. So,
Sean, what are the two swatches of property that are with the green and the gray?
The cities.
That's ours.
Yeah.
Some are ours. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Those were taken on because of AWAS
We did the-
system.
Okay. I recall.
To protect the AWAS.
I was just concerned they were going to cause some sort of infrastructure
No.
At some point, we suggest that the resolution of services, that at some point we need to bring those into the city as well, or else we're creating a hole in our own donut.
Exactly.
I mean, we have been successful, obviously, getting Innovation Court, Sawmill Park Innovation Court. We have EMS Material Systems here tonight, Symmetry 2, two examples of projects that have benefited from that infrastructure. It's just this next chunk, this next piece is a bigger lift, I think, for everybody. We just want you to be aware of that, and we've got to come up with some approaches to making it work so that it can become part of our economic base.
And this is just one example, whether we're talking about the Wogus property or the Wolf Industrial Park, it's the same story, just a different direction, different dollar figures, but very similar dollar figures.
I do see Jack Brickner's here tonight. We met with him last week, and I don't know if they have anything to offer, but they're representing, they're well aware of some of these things. Jack, did you want to, is there anything you want to add, representing the owners who've been anticipating this for quite a while? Jack.
Good. Thank you. Do want to know that we've worked with Sean and Dave and staff here for the last number of months.
Get your name and address.
Oh, I'm sorry.
For the record.
Jack Brickner with Planned Communities, 110 Northwoods Boulevard, representing the Wilguses here. Apologize for not introducing myself. We have been working with staff here probably for the last 8 months or so on the annexation and the zoning. And from a marketing standpoint, we're looking at putting those two items in place, and then we can do a harder marketing for the property. And right now, when we get any phone calls or interest in the property, it's not annexed and it's not part of what's at zone. So we're trying to get over those hurdles right now. And then once that's behind us, then we can get into harder marketing the property. We, with Sean and Dave and their input and stuff, ourselves and the Wilguses are very aware of what the infrastructure cost is going to be and what it's going to take to get from one end of their property to the other, or even parts of their property. So they are very aware of that and the challenges of it.
Questions for the representative or Sean? Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. So this will continue to really the 11th will be the third reading, and that's when we'll ask for City Council's action would be that evening.
Okay, moving on to item 11, consideration of resolution 18-26.
Resolution number 18-28, a resolution indicating what services the City of Delaware will provide to 2.091 plus or minus acres of land, more or less. Description and map are attached here to as Exhibits A and B for the annexation known as the Joshua Morgan annexation by Andrew P. Wecker, agent for the petitioners.
Dave's.
Madam Mayor, members of council, this is the first step of the annexation process, as you're well aware at this point, for three pre-existing small parcels that in total are a little over 2 acres on State Route 521 north, which is on the east side of town. Andy Wecker has been representing the applicant in this case. There's a single family home. It's kind of hard to see on here, but there's a single family home that straddles a couple of those parcels at this time. But all three parcels could be theoretically constructed upon should they be annexed to the city. I believe this was subdivided in the county at some point in the 60s, early 60s or so. And it is contiguous. We can serve it with all of our services. This is the first step. As you know, if you pass the resolution of services as required by the Ohio Revised Code, it goes back to the county, eventually comes back to you and gets set before you, much in the same way that we just heard the Wilgus annexation. So far staff doesn't have any additional conditions or objections to this proposed annexation. Happy to answer any questions you might have, and Andy's here tonight to answer any questions from the applicant's side.
Any questions by council? Does anybody want to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion for approval of resolution 1828.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Schaefer, a second by Mr. Jones. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes, motion carries. Item 12 is consideration of resolution 18-29. Elaine, if you'll please read this into the record.
Resolution number 18-29, a resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into a joint economic development district, a JED contract with Berkshire Township.
Mr. Shulman?
Madam Mayor, members of council, we spoke about this a while ago, but you may recall we entered a joint economic development district, a JED, with Berkshire Township around the area of the Outlet Mall. At that time, there was originally conceived as a three-way JED, but then Sunbury wasn't interested in participating, so their share was split off between Delaware and Berkshire Township, which made our share higher than normal for a JED. Berkshire Township has approached us with continuing to do another JED, and the split would be more in line with what normal JEDs are, and we've talked about it at the meeting as to what we want to accept there. So I think we arrived at a number, and so this would effectuate City Manager Homan to enter into that agreement and kick off the process. No action can be taken tonight because we have to set a hearing for at least 30 days out, and they have to have a hearing as well. So this is just the start of that process. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Darren, I was searching for our past conversations about this. We kind of agreed with the numbers at some point. Those numbers have not changed. I couldn't compare what.
No, so what, correct, they have not changed. To kind of catch you up on our discussions, originally, council expressed reluctance to move down from the number that we were at. The township came back and we had another meeting and we did agree to go down. So we have not moved from that compromise. But that is lower than the original point we were.
I remember that.
Well, but the other one was higher because that other organization dropped out.
Yeah, we got a higher share than, sorry, we got a higher share than pretty much any JED. We looked at all the comparables around the state and ours is one of the highest for that special circumstance.
So we can't get 30-70, I mean, we have to stick with this 80-20.
I mean, at this point,
I
no.
tried to go with that number, but.
That's what we were trying to get at.
Right.
We said,
Remember, they need us.
that's what we thought.
Well, and to that last one, they really did need us in terms of leverage. Our agreement with them said we would try to partner with each other for future JEDs. They're not bound to us. They want to give us the right of first refusal. This one is less, there's no political controversy with it. So they probably would have an easier time finding another community to partner with, but they didn't even want to go down that path if we could reach an agreement. But the Outlet Mall had some controversy with it and this one does not.
Okay. I was just trying.
We did, Tom and I did meet with them multiple times to try to get it. They were pretty adamant that that's what they wanted to be. Is that fair, Tom?
That's fair.
And I think that Bill Holtree, I think, was here.
That's right.
Chairman Jeff George last year talked about it. So this is just a resolution setting the hearing, which would be June
25th
June
at
25th.
7:20, I believe.
So that's all you're doing tonight.
Move for the approval of resolution 18-29.
Second.
Wait, no,
What?
we set a public hearing for this resolution on the agenda.
I'm sorry, yes, it has been set.
Oh,
That's right.
right.
By virtue of that. So this is just first reading.
Sorry.
The hearing was
No
on
action.
consent. This is the actual first reading, but we're not going to vote on this one because
Item I on the
Right.
consent agenda.
Sorry about that.
I withdraw my
apologize.
motion.
Okay. All right, move on to item 13, consideration of ordinance number 18-38. Elaine, if you'll please read this in the record.
Ordinance number 18-38, an ordinance approving a performance-based economic incentive grant agreement with Guild Associates for electrical upgrades to a building at 105 Innovation Court and declaring an emergency. Emergency clause, that this ordinance is hereby declared to be an emergency measure necessary to provide for the public peace, safety, health, and welfare of the city, and is necessary to finalize negotiations so that construction may begin without the applicant risking the loss of the incentive, and as such will be in full force and effect immediately upon its passage.
I'm going to read 14-2. They go together.
Ordinance number 18-39, an ordinance amending the 2018 appropriations ordinance to provide funding for a performance-based economic incentive grant to Guild Associates, Inc. to assist in upgrading electrical infrastructure that will allow the company to occupy a portion of the Symmetry 2 building at 105 Innovation Court and declaring an emergency. Emergency clause, that this ordinance is hereby declared to be an emergency measure necessary to provide for the public peace, safety, health, and welfare of the city, and is necessary to finalize negotiations so that construction may begin without the applicant risking the loss of the incentive, and as such will be in full force and effect immediately upon its passage.
Thank you. Good evening again.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council. Last week was Economic Development Week, so I'm celebrating with you this evening with several items on the agenda. What we have before you on this first case here is an economic incentive grant agreement with Guild and Associates. I always want to say Guild and Associates, but it's Guild Associates. And they are looking to occupy a large portion of the Symmetry 2 building. They are a manufacturer of a media that helps to filtrate, and I'll let Mike explain better than me, I'm the non-technical guy. It helps filter natural gases as those are being mined. This is a new process for them, a new production facility, first of its kind. However, the building itself is not set up with adequate electricity to allow them to manage their operations there. So to assist them, and it's really the only incentive other than the CRA that was already placed on the building as the building was built, to assist them with occupying the building itself to get their operations up and running quickly. I have recommended a $10,000 grant to be utilized to assist with those electrical upgrades to allow them to occupy the building. In return for that, they're committing to the creation of 25 new full-time positions with $1.768 million of payroll within a 3-year time period. So that puts your return on investment at a very considerable amount. It's a 1,914% return on investment in a 3-year time period. That's pretty good, right? As you can see there on your fact sheet, all of the elements that we require for incentives have been met. Everything's green. They are well above LMI. The return on investment is there. The schools are not involved in this project. There's no school component. So it does meet all those criteria. With that being said, I introduced to you, I guess John actually already introduced Mike Freeburn to you from Guild Associates. Mike, would you like to talk a little bit about the company and your project?
Good evening. Yeah, my name is Mike Freeburn with Guild Associates. I'm in the business development side of the, so I'm not a technical person, but I do know enough about what we're trying to accomplish. We've been in business in Dublin since 1981, and we've done a lot of commercial projects along with military contracts in terms of making washing and drying machines for the military, mobile remain collection systems, which are like morgues basically. And we've also got into the commercial side of it, and we have a new product line, which is a H2S that will remove hydrogen sulfide from biogas. This is a really big market, and we're really excited to get into it because there are so many natural gas and energy, and whether it's digesters from the agricultural industry, landfills, wastewater treatment plants. H2S is unfortunately a flammable gas that comes up, and we are able to remove it from these airstreams and turn it into whether it's renewable natural gas or electricity. It really is a really good project, and we, like Sean said, we're looking to bring 25 people on board. In a nutshell, how we make it, this is why we're here tonight, is we'll be doing some chemical blending of some, and they're non-hazardous materials that we will turn into a dough. And that's a mixer extruder, which is what is why we need so much power for this place. So it's, and then once we do the extrusion, then basically you have like a big pizza dough, and then you have these ovens that have to cool it, and then we granulate it and turn it into basically a little pellets so that you can put them in absorber vessels in the field, and that's how we're able to separate the H2S from the other impurities that are out there. So that's in a nutshell how we do it. We're very cautious in safety, that we'll make sure that we follow all regulations, and we really are on that in terms of where we are in Dublin, and we've worked with them for over 20 years and have a very good relationship, and we're hoping to do the same here in Delaware. So.
Questions?
Just one quick one. During the manufacturing process, is there any odors that are emitted to, that anything that's?
There should not be any nasty odors. There really shouldn't.
They do recapture 110% of the dust because it all has value. So they put that back into the production process, so they're not losing any value on a, I guess it's not really a byproduct, but on anything that's left.
Mhm.
3 of the 25 positions will be relocating from the Dublin facility, to be honest, but they're new to us. We did try to convince them to bring their entire headquarters up here from Dublin, but we'll have to keep working on that.
Over time.
This sounds very interesting. Any other questions?
To me, based on the ROI, that 1,914%, all criteria met, I make a motion to suspend the rules requiring 3 readings in ordinance 1838.
Second. I have a motion by Mr. Jones, second by Ms. Keller. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes.
Move the adoption of the ordinance, for the emergency clause on 1838.
Second. Motion by Mr. Jones, second by Mrs. Keller. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes.
I move the adoption of ordinance 18-38.
Second. Motion by Mr. Jones, second by Mrs. Keller. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes. Motion carries.
Madam Mayor, I make a motion to suspend the rules requiring 3 readings on ordinance 18-39.
Second. Motion by Mr. Jones, second by Mrs. Keller. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes.
I make a motion for the emergency clause on ordinance 18-39.
Second. Motion by Mr. Jones, second by Mrs. Keller. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes. Motion carries.
Madam Mayor, I make a motion for the approval of ordinance 18-39.
Oh, now it carries. Okay. Motion by Mr. Jones.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Keller. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We're excited. Which I am. Okay, item 15 is consideration of ordinance number 18-40.
Ordinance number 18-40, an ordinance approving a community reinvestment area agreement and school compensation agreement with American Electric Power, Olentangy Local Schools, Delaware Area Career Center, and the City of Delaware for investment in real property improvements on a new build on Slack Road and declaring an emergency. Emergency clause, that this ordinance is hereby declared to be an emergency measure necessary to provide for the public peace, safety, health, and welfare of the city. It is necessary to finalize negotiations so that construction may begin without the applicant risking the loss of the incentive, and as such will be in full force and effect immediately upon its passage.
Thank you.
Oh, all right, I'm still here. I switched chairs to make things a little bit more interesting, and I was being polite.
Wow.
We have in front, before you a request for a community reinvestment area tax abatement for a new 54,000 square foot service center by our longtime economic development partner, American Electric Power. They have outgrown their current facility on London Road and are in need of building a brand new state-of-the-art service center with more storage area, outdoor storage area for vehicles and so on and so forth. We are in competition with Sunbury, Ohio for said service center. So this was a competitive retention and expansion project. As you can see with this one, they're committing to 9 employees in the first 3 years, which, as you know, by state law, a company has 3 years to meet a certain commitment for CRAs. However, this will actually be doubling their labor force to 24 employees after a certain number of years, but they're committing to the 9 in the 3 years. They're retaining the 24 in the city. You can see the new payroll there is $456,412 for the 9, and the retained is $1.7 million. On this one, they met all of the criteria that we put forth for CRAs. The LMI was $50,712, so it's above LMI. It has a return on investment of 30% for the schools because they are doing a 30% school pilot payment off to the school district. However, as you can see there, the one red is the return on investment to us was less than what we like to see. However, we are still recommending the 100% 15 years due to the long-standing economic development relationship we have with AEP. They are the ones that started our legacy industrial park, which is Pittsburgh Drive, and brought Pittsburgh Paints there, PPG. And on this project, it's actually one of those instances where we do have a public-private partnership. We're actually going to be sharing the cost of infrastructure. We're paying for half of the water line to be installed. They're paying the other half. They're paying for the entirety of the sewer line to serve the center. And they're also paying for all road improvements up to their site from Liberty Road over. So there's a considerable infrastructure investment they're making that we're actually going to benefit from because it will serve some additional sites along there in the future. So it is a great way of leveraging one project for future projects for us. We are also paying for, as Blake would say, we're paying for the design work on those utilities as well. So I have Liberty Schindel with me. Liberty is actually the former economic development director for Pickerington, and she is now with AEP and their economic development department. So Liberty.
Liberty Schindel, 1 Riverside Plaza, Columbus, 43215. Good evening, Mayor, Council, and city staff. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be before you tonight. Beautiful evening. Your downtown looks wonderful. I absolutely appreciate that, and it's just fantastic. Tonight I'm pinch hitting for Tim Wells, so I was just kind of brought into this project, and I really appreciate Sean and Kelsey for their support and kind of helping. It's been a team effort to get brought up to speed. So the original building dates back to the 1960s, and it was last updated in late 1999, early 2000. It's approximately 2.5 acres, and it's landlocked due to neighboring property to the south. There's limited parking and space for vehicle operations inside and outside the fence, and it's at a fairly busy intersection at Liberty and London Roads. There's periodic heavy traffic at neighboring commercial businesses, and there's a short distance between intersection and vehicle entry. The new Delaware Service Center is sitting on just shy of 50 acres. There's less infringement and limitations from neighboring uses, improved access to Sawmill Parkway and US 42, the signaled at-grade CSX railroad crossing, and the current unsafe intersection is eliminated, additional space for safe operation of line and other vehicles, additional outdoor storage space, and building space for operations and office. Our total investment is approximately $11 million into this facility. Again, Sean had mentioned the 9 full-time employees that will be created in 3 years, and it looks like there's going to be an additional 24 employees by year 10. So that would be a total of 57 jobs at the service center. We hope to break ground this summer and complete the facility by fall of 2019. So, welcome any questions.
I will add that this is the first project in our Sawmill Parkway TIF area that we established when we negotiated Sawmill Parkway. So this will contribute toward our payments towards Sawmill Parkway's completion. Just to remind you how that works, the first 15 years of the TIF, when this project's done and it's activated, 25% of the revenue off of the land increase from CAUV up to industrial, agriculture to industrial, will go to the school district, and this is Olentangy School District. And then 75% will go off towards our commitment on the road. For the second 15 years, the abatement runs out, and then 50% goes to the school district of the building and the land, and the other 50% goes toward our commitment on the road.
Got all that? Questions?
Actually, as a side note, I just want to thank Mr. Hughes for the addition of the coding and the statistics. I think that's right on the money. Return on investment, et cetera. That helps. Thank you.
Any other questions? Any motions?
I move to suspend the rules and call out three readings on ordinance 1840.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Schaefer, second by Mr. Browning. Roll call.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes.
I move for approval of the emergency clause on ordinance 1840.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Schaefer, second by Mr. Browning. Roll call. Were you looking at me for? Not you, it's two.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes.
And I move for the approval of ordinance 18-40.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Schaefer, second by Mr. Browning. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes, motion carries. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks. Flattery will get you everywhere. You see that? And item 16 is consideration of ordinance number 18-41. And if you'll please read this into the record.
Ordinance number 18-41, an ordinance approving a community reinvestment area agreement and school compensation agreement with Engineered Material Systems Delaware City Schools and Delaware Area Career Center for investment in real property improvements on their building and parcel at 101 Innovation Court and declaring an emergency. Emergency clause that this ordinance is hereby declared to be an emergency measure necessary to provide for the public peace, safety, health, and welfare of the city, and is necessary to finalize negotiations so that construction may begin without the applicant risking the loss of the incentive, and as such will be in full force and effect immediately upon its passage.
Thank you.
All right, this is the last one for me this evening, I promise.
Promise.
I promise.
Come on.
Unless Dave makes me come back up here for something. I didn't hear that. Let's see. This is an expansion project with Engineered Material Systems. They are requesting they requested 100% 15-year tax abatement. We are requesting a 90%, recommending a 90% for 15-year abatement, and that was to get the return on investment up to a level for the project that we would like to see. What they're doing with this project is they're happily growing again with their company after their 2015 occupancy of their new 64,000 square foot facility. And if you have not been in it, I encourage you to do so. It's a beautiful facility. With this, they will be doing another 45,000 square foot off the back of the facility. I do have to correct, I mistyped that their address is actually 100 Innovation Court, not 101 Innovation Court. I'm bad with addresses. My wife says so too. For this project, they will be retaining the original 11 FTEs that they hired as part of the previous project. as you know, with the previous project, they committed to hire or retaining the employees from the original buildings. So I did not add those to this to get the numbers up. I just kept those 11 in here. They had a payroll of $1,050,000. They will be adding, as part of this project, 8 new FTEs with a new payroll of $700,000. Additional, correct, on top of all of that. I will say, though, that if you go back and look at the original case from 2014 when we passed it, 2015 when they occupied the building, they committed to the same thing. But you can see just after a couple years, they exceeded their original commitment and added a much greater payroll. So these were very, very conservative numbers that we came to as part of our negotiation. As you can see on this, with the 90% abatement, they're meeting all of our criteria for an incentive package. The wages are $87,500 on average per year, which is much greater than LMI of $39,000 per year. There is a return on investment of 26.05% to the city and a 30% return on investment to the school districts, because they will be making a 30% pilot payment off to the school districts, as we usually ask them to do. I think there's anything else to add to this. With that, I'll introduce Mr. Todd Iron to speak a little about his company and his project.
So first of all, thank you for allowing us to be here again after a couple of years. It's kind of reflecting back, and like it was only 2 years ago when we added, Todd Iron with Engineered Material Systems. I'm the president, 100 Innovation Court, Delaware, Ohio. Thank you. Sorry. And anyway, so it's been a quick 2 years, and fortunately we've continued to grow. And actually today I was kind of going through some of my records. I actually found our original document from 1997 when we moved up here from Worthington. And it's been 20 years. So it's gone by quite quickly, actually. And when we moved up here, we had 8 employees. We hired 4 new people for our tax abatement back then, and we had a 12,000 square foot building. So in the last 20 years, we've gone through 2 buildings on Johnson Drive. We leased one on London Road. We've built a new one on Innovation Court, and now we're adding on. So we've come a long way in the last 20 years. So, and a lot of it's through the support of Delaware, the city, the people that I've dealt with over the last 20 years. And I'm very thankful for our relationship with everyone, and everybody's been very supportive. So thank you very much. And with this project, it will allow us to continue to grow. It'll grow our employment, grow our sales, and hopefully in another 20 years, we have 100+ employees, and we're adding on in the back lot, which we're keeping our back lot, so in case we ever have to add on in the future. So it's been a very good 20 years. So thank you.
Thank you for choosing Delaware.
Yeah.
I would like to add that Mr. Iron and his team have been an incredibly gracious host to us as we've had multiple site visits at his conference room, his building. Again, his building is a showpiece for the city of Delaware. So taking a new company through this building in our community has been very helpful to us. Unfortunately, we didn't get the last one, but we were pretty darn close. And it was really actually, they in the last site visit, they actually requested to come back to his building and requested certain members of his staff to actually be there with us because that relationship was already established.
Okay.
And I think their support of our sister city program, and in particular, our relationship with Sakata, has been very, very helpful.
Any other questions? Motions?
I'll move to suspend the rules requiring 3 readings on ordinance 1841. Second.
Motion by Mr. Schaefer, second by Mr. Jones. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes.
I'll move for approval of the emergency clause on ordinance 1841. Second.
Motion by Mr. Schaefer, second by Mr. Jones. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes.
Move for the approval of ordinance 1841. Second.
Motion by Mr. Schaefer, second by Mr. Jones. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes. Motion carries. Good luck.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you again for all your support.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 17 is consideration of ordinance number 18-42. And then if you'll please read that in the record.
Ordinance number 18-42, an ordinance supplementing the 2018 appropriations ordinance to reallocate appropriations from the municipal court administration budget to a new mission court budget within the municipal court fund and declaring an emergency. Emergency clause, that this ordinance is hereby declared to be an emergency measure necessary to provide for the public peace, safety, health, and welfare of the city, and for the further reason to provide for the timely accounting for cost incurred and subject to reimbursement related to the mission court docket of Delaware Municipal Court, and as such will be in full force and effect immediately upon its passage.
All right, good evening. My name is Mary Ann Hemmeter, and I'm one of your municipal court judges. And we're not asking you for money, we're asking to reallocate money from what I consider the municipal court's main budget into the mission court budget, because that money is going to eventually be reimbursed by Veterans Services. Also, we are applying for grants that are due in 2019 for payment in 2020. So as this court grows, we have to make sure we don't commingle the money for veterans with other accounts within the municipal court. It's very important, especially when you get into the grant writing season, that we are able to prove that we're fiscally responsible with that money, because it is not money that we get through special projects or through court costs or fees. It comes from an outside entity. So I want to thank Financial Director Dean Stelzer, who's worked with me a lot on this, because this is not something they teach us in law school or in judges school. But it's an exciting court. It is growing. We've already seen growth within the few months we've had it going. We've already been able to place 2 veterans in what I would call sober houses outside of Delaware County. So it's a successful program. It's just we've now got to be a little more modern and more transparent about what we do with the money used for the mission court, our Veterans Treatment Court. So any questions?
It's a great program.
Yeah.
Well, I'll keep you. We got some really good stuff coming. We have got money and a grant and free space to show a movie called Of Men and War. It was shown on PBS as part of the Point of View series. It follows several Iraq, Afghanistan soldiers coming home and how they deal with PTSD. It won all kinds of awards. They're going to let us show it for free, and they're going to give us a press package for free. I don't do these things. That's why I hire people to do it, but that's why I need this special account. So, any questions? I'll get off my soapbox.
Okay. Okay. No questions?
Mayor, I make a motion to suspend the rules requiring 3 readings on ordinance 1842.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Jones, second by Mr. Schaefer. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes.
Move for the adoption of emergency clause on ordinance 1842.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Jones, second by Mr. Schaefer. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes.
Move the adoption of ordinance 18-42.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Jones, second by Mr. Schaefer. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for what you're doing for our veterans too. Item 18 is consideration of ordinance number 18-43. Let's read 19 also.
Ordinance number 18-43, an ordinance for AEP for approval of a conditional use permit request for a new service center building on the approximately 50 acres located on the south side of Slack Road and just west of the railroad tracks on property zoned A1 Agricultural District. And ordinance number 18-44, ordinance for AEP for approval of a combined preliminary and final development plan for a new service center building on approximately 50 acres located on the south side of Slack Road and just west of the railroad tracks on property zoned A1 Agricultural District.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, this is the first reading, and you set the public hearing for your next June meeting, at which time we'll present, but it's the case you heard tonight for the incentive package.
Thank you. Okay, item 20 and 21. If you'll please read those, Elaine. Ordinance 18-21 and 18-22. Revised.
Ordinance number 18-21 revised. An ordinance by Medrock LLC for approval of a revised zoning text amendment to the existing Willowbrook Farm Tract PUD overlaid zoning text plan unit development to allow a modification to the maximum dwelling units and density to multifamilies area 3 and 4 to allow additional dwelling units in area 3 and removing units in area 4, thereby decreasing the overall units currently allowed in total located on the east side of Houck Road on approximately 38 acres on property zoned R6 multifamily residential district with a PUD, planned unit development overlay. And ordinance number 18-22 revised. An ordinance for Medrock LLC for approval of a revised combined preliminary and final development plan to multifamily area 3, the flats on Houck, of the existing Willowbrook Farm Tract for a 180-unit apartment complex on approximately 15.506 acres located on the northeast corner of Houck Road and DeGenova Way on property zoned R6 PUD, multifamily residential district with a planned unit development overlay.
Madam Mayor, members of council, I can give you a brief legislative history of this. You may recall this case was before council a few meetings ago at the applicant's request. It was remanded back to the Planning Commission and it was revised. Planning Commission had their hearing and voted on that revised proposal. It is back for council's consideration. That's why it's marked as a fourth reading. However, it is the first reading for this revised proposal. As you noted earlier in the agenda, it is set for a public hearing because when we remanded it, we indicated that we wanted to give the public a chance to speak on the revised proposal. We did not know what it would be at that time. And based on the holiday, we are going to be meeting special next week for that, and that'll be the public opportunity to have the public hearing, and that will be the fifth reading. I'd be happy to answer any procedural questions, but other than that, this is kind of like a first reading that we normally do.
Any questions for Darren?
So at the 21st meeting, then there'll be presentation of the new proposal. And
Yes, my anticipation would be at the next meeting would be the time when the developer would have an opportunity to come forward and do what they normally do at a public hearing, and then we usually do it first, and then the public gets to speak after that. But that's obviously up to the mayor and council how they want to order that.
Okay. Be good? Okay, we'll move on to city manager's report.
Not a whole lot, just the mayor attended last week an award celebration, award ceremony with AEP, where the city received this award for the don't drop it, water treatment plant. Blake, do you want to just elaborate a little on this, please? Thank you.
I know.
So a number of the things that the city treatment processes have done we've taken a lot of consideration into how we operate the plant, and one of the main things we've done is we've added variable frequency drive, VFDs, so we can consistently change the speed at which certain pumps and blowers are moving at, and this has saved us considerable amount of power just treating the same amount of water. AEP and us have figured that we've saved about 3 million kilowatt hours per year. This is substantial savings, and nothing else has changed but adding these drives to our existing infrastructure. And besides as they like to say, besides the incentive checks that we got back from that, we're seeing the savings every single month, and we'll continue to see them on in the future.
We'll continue,
Yeah.
right, yeah.
That's all I have, just one item. We might have the IAF contract on for first reading for the 21st. There's a possibility of that, but I'll advise you later in the week about that. That's it.
Madam Mayor, may I interrupt with one question?
Sure.
So regarding item numbers 20 and 21, since there was incorrect signage posted, I just wanted to double check to see if any of the members of the public were here thinking that there might be a public hearing, just give them a chance to maybe, if there was confusion.
20 and 21, please.
Right, just make it known and perhaps give a comment now rather than at the next meeting.
Was there anyone here on 20 and 21 that wanted to speak tonight?
Okay, just wanted to double check to make sure. Thank you very much.
Sure. Council comments?
One I have, Mayor, is it was very nice tonight to see Mr. Hughes present some of that growth. These companies growing, that's awesome. And that's all I have.
I love the new sheets too, the green and the red.
Yeah.
That helps tremendously. Mrs. Keller?
I have nothing, thank you.
Mr. Browning?
Like me.
Nothing, Mayor.
Nothing.
Nothing, thank you.
Wow. Okay. This weekend is Arts Festival, don't forget. And then the 29th is Eyes of Freedom out at National Guard. They'll run Tuesday through Saturday, so please don't forget that.
The 26th is the marathon.
Marathon is 26th.
Marathon.
New Moon?
Half.
Half.
Okay.
Or half marathon.
There's our training.
Wait a minute. I'm not doing that
Don't
either.
get yourself
but-
no panic. And then there's what on Memorial Day, there's the Oak Grove
Yes.
ceremony.
Yes. Yeah. So we have a lot going on. And with that, I look for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
We're adjourned at 8:16.
Can we start?
Yeah.
Yeah.